order. Workshop to order.
Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'll turn it over to John.
Okay, I'm sure one or other of you or all of you picked up the fact that today is not Monday, it is March 7th. Sorry, March. Okay, today is Tuesday. Okay, but just generally speaking, I think we had talked about another meeting on Thursday. I don't know if you're looking at the material in front of you, whether you think you want another meeting immediately or whether you prefer to wait till next Monday. So during the meeting, and as you look at the material, we can decide at the end what you want to schedule going forward. So the material, a lot of material handing out to you. The first one is the departmental budget summary with and without the planning position and the bathrooms. You'll see if we add the planning position and the bathrooms, we'll be looking at a 5.7% increase. Without the bathrooms and planning position, the next page will show 3.8%.
Question,
Yes.
you show a planner at 98,000 on this,
Yep.
this sheet, and on this sheet, showing it at 55,000.
If you look at the
That's
total
the
for the
second
department, turn the page,
Pardon,
turn the page.
where's this one?
55 is the salary element. You got the second page? Should be bottom right.
98,121.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second page, is it? Oh, you're talking about second section. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't see the two of these.
Oh,
Yeah, without all of that,
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, the increase was 4.2, and this shows that it's dropped to 3.8.
Yeah.
What got taken out of that?
We've been fine tuning some of the spending and some savings in public works and also in transfer station. And I think that was the bulk of it. And I think we were correcting.
they shuffled some staff around.
Yeah. So,
Okay, for now, I want some idea
Is it
what.
still without capital though?
we were-
Is it still without capital?
no, yeah, capital. We didn't run that for tonight, did we? We didn't. We
I
can.
can open it if you want to.
Yeah, there's plenty there. But yeah, no capital. So, this is just the summary of where we got so far. And as I said, 3.8% is the increase.
And we don't know at this point what fund balance would be, to compensate for that increase.
Right. And so that's, the first block is the planning budget with the town planner salary of 55,000. Isn't high nowadays. And the bathrooms, best estimate is cost of construction, because Judy asked about that. Cost of construction last year was 21,000, so inflation probably brought that up. Water, sewer were our best estimates, and whatever, based on our experience with the rec gear bathrooms. So 37,820 is what our
Is
best
that
estimate.
adding that on to the bathrooms we already have, or is this?
No, this is just, if you recollect, last year, there was a request to have bathrooms built. And
No,
is that
there was a spot going around if the boardwalk was ever built, you could just add on to the other bathroom.
Is there any possible way that this could go under capital improvement?
Oh, yeah.
To not, so the taxpayers aren't the burden.
Yeah, that'd be,
I mean, if we decide to take more than the 4 point whatever percent out, that this could be included so that the taxpayers aren't burdened with it. It's just a thought, I'm just shooting it out there.
It could.
All right, but eventually the taxpayers do get burdened with it year after year.
Well, yeah, they're gonna have to maintain it, but I mean, the initial cost of putting it up for $37,000 would come out of capital improvement.
The bathrooms,
Yeah,
I think the bathrooms are a must, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm saying they're a must, yes,
Yeah.
but I'm saying how to pay for them.
Oh,
That's
don't-
what I'm going at.
Or let me ask it a different way. Are you thinking of taking a bond out or whether taking the money out of capital inputs?
I'm thinking of taking money out of capital. I know we talked bond, but to me, I'll go back again with what I've said before. We have to have all of our ducks in a row before you start taking out a bond. But if you want something like this, and which I think the town does need, I'm not saying we don't need it, then we need to start looking at maybe taking more than the 3-point-odd% out to pay for the bathroom, so it's not a burden on the taxpayers. It's a thought I'm putting out there. Yes, Ken?
Well, that was one of my questions. I wanted to know what budget this was coming out of, if it wasn't coming out of capital improvement. But the other one is, in various conversations over the last year about this, I have heard different things about tying into sewer. And some of the things that I've heard would indicate that the sewer part of it would cost far more than $2,400.
The DEP did give permission, as you know, for the hookup. I can't, didn't estimate what it might cost. I will make a suggestion that maybe it would be more efficient if everything was clustered by the bridge, if it were moved down Railroad Avenue. For example, there are 2 bus parking lots that are never used. If we're located someplace like that, I think it'd be simpler all the way around. However, that hasn't been discussed by anybody except me. There's always parking down that end, as there is on the rec pier, whereas if you're always at the bridge,
Right, well, and that was another thing that I had raised at an earlier meeting when the bathrooms were being discussed, that we do already have bathrooms on that side of town. So if everyone was insistent that we had to have another set of bathrooms, it seemed more sensible to put them on
Totally
the other
agree.
side.
and it pulls the traffic and the parking away
Yeah.
from the bridge.
Yeah.
Because I had thought the same thing when you and I had talked about it, that we've got to kind of start eliminating all that congestion right down there by Red Seats and Tax Breaks. We've got to start kind of put it out a little bit. And I agree with John, that maybe we should think of looking down towards Railroad Avenue and utilize that area also.
When we were doing the downtown project, I think a bunch of us thought that it would be in CEI's old parking lot,
Mhm.
in between the drive-in and drive-out,
Oh, okay, yeah.
right? Isn't that where we were thinking that the bathrooms?
The Haggard lot,
Yes,
spoken of.
yep.
I'm just looking at construction-wise, how much, if it would be easier to put it in down closer to the sewer plant.
No, I was just letting you know that because it was more towards the center of town, but up off the waterfront.
But I mean, if this is what we decide to do, if we would decide, I'd like to really start thinking of taking it out as capital
Absolutely.
instead of putting it into the budget. Yes, Steve?
And just one more plug that I have made in the past. There are currently bathrooms in the Scout Hall, and it might cost far less to spruce that up as a bathroom. That's just one little quick walk right off of Main Street than to sell it.
Thank you.
So, that's the second document. The next thing, I thought, I just want to give you all the information first. We're going to start on the updated departmental budgets, the airport, transfer station, public works, and municipal buildings. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. And I've got the budgeted departmental revenues, which you should have the in. Yes.
The airport, okay, it's only
$678. So you took money out of the airport, is that what you're telling me? And I'm going to look at municipal building, I think you did that.
Um,
Or was this personnel? Is that it?
It was part of it, yes.
Okay, right, personnel.
Because basically, you know, Public Works, for all practical purposes, does the work on the municipal building. So we moved some people around, we do part-time. And in the end, we managed to get that down by a small amount, and you'll notice, you look at Public Works, that's also down by a small amount, as is the transfer station. And that was pretty much all, let's see, Public Works is down 4.2%, and the transfer station is down. Let me see. Yeah, no. 7 point, almost 8%. And as you know, that's one of the things the board wants to do, namely combine the two departments. And so Ted, as you know, he's director of the Public Works Division, which has three departments, Public Works, Transfer Station, and wastewater. So that's where those changes came from.
And we decided to put 1/3 of his salary towards the transfer station and 2/3 towards the highway department. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The board agreed to that.
So,
Yes, Judy?
And did you adjust his salary for the increase?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
okay.
Does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir?
Yeah, did the 1/3 of the health insurance?
Yes.
Yes,
Switch over?
everything went
Okay.
1/3 one way,
Perfect.
2/3 one the other.
Okay, excellent,
Yes.
thanks.
Okay, and the last thing you should have is your budgeted departmental revenues. It's not in my package, but it's in another package. Oh, no, I don't. Same pages. It looks like this. It should be the last thing in the packet. It reads revenue comparison.
Oh,
At the very back page. So, might as well just read down the projected revenue for the recreation. That's the second column, 2020 projected. So in 21, we're looking at 453 as opposed to 440,000. Excise tax, we put in as the same as last year. In fact, there have been quite a few new cars registered and paying taxes. State revenue and reimbursements, that's our estimate, based on what we've been receiving year to date. But may do a little bit better than that, when the revenue sharing gets locked in. On the miscellaneous budget of 186,000 for this current year, budgeting 199,000. For this coming year, we've seen some impact fees, we've seen some interest, we've seen some more building permits and application fees, and more activity with the police, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how we come up with 199,300. EMS, more activity, so we're budgeting 266,000 versus the 221,000. That's I think probably 288,000, the second column, 288,000 from last year. Dennis, I believe, is here.
Yeah, and so that figure does not include the contracts for Dresden and Westport, because we don't know what they are yet. So it should just go up from there.
Transfer station, we put pretty much the same numbers last year, 254,000 and 254,000. Various charges for service, we put in 65,200, same as last year, even though we have received 46,000 already year to date. Senior center, we put in the within the same 6,000 figure as we had this current year. Airport, slight increase in revenues, fuel sales, et cetera. So we increased that from 58,000 to 70,000. And on the waterfront, that's kind of a moving target. There are some increases in some fees, and on the Creamery Pier itself, the fees, I think, were up about 5,000 on the Creamery Pier alone. So there's a very modest increase in the overall revenues, 2.6 versus the new one was 2.7.
So, John, if I'm doing the numbers right, at the end of June is when the budget closes?
Yes.
So we have basically 4 more months to collect revenue?
Correct.
Just a quick look at this is that we have a projected revenue at the recreation for 440, and then next year we have 453.5, and we aren't going to be anywhere near the 440 for this year. If you do the math, I mean, if you just,
Well,
Well, that number's not updated though.
That says,
February 27th.
I know, but I'm looking at Alan's report, and it should be 263,801, and this looks like it's last month's, which is weird because the airport one is updated.
It says updated.
No,
last
this-
year.
No, I'm looking at the one that Alan just emailed us.
Oh. But I
And that
have
was a
question.
couple of days before the books closed, so when we first did that one, the one on the paper. was it-
Right,
as a-
I'm just letting you know though that
I can look up.
it's not 56.55%, the number is higher.
Yeah,
I see where-
I'm just saying that I don't mind having a projected revenue, but I just would like to have it more in line of what it's going to be.
Right.
Because we've given this to the town over and over and over again, and it was almost $50,000 short last year, or projected. So, like I said, I just would like a better number to give to the town.
yeah, there are some program enhancements in the works, and there's some indications that some contracts with some other towns could come to fruition, and that's why the number. No,
That's fine. Just as long as I've been on the board, which is going to be pretty much 8 years, I don't think the rec department's ever met its projected revenue.
Yes, yes.
I would say the same about the waterfront committee. They haven't come close to meeting these numbers before, so I don't know how realistic it is. I know that you did just raise the rents on Creamery Pier, but not so much, if they haven't met their number, that might have warranted the increase in projected revenues here, but they've never come close.
it's not a moneymaker, not the way it's currently set up. And they do get a lot of their revenue between now and the start of the summer. So-
But they're not meeting their projected revenue. In the past, they rarely have. So I would agree that when someone goes in to vote and they see this is the budget, but this is what comes in revenue, I think it's misleading if those people have never, if those departments have never really met those numbers.
Judy?
I think what John just said was quite accurate as far as the waterfront committee. They never really have had a budget that they really work with and try to, they try to provide an oversight of what's going on down there to you folks, but it's never been like other budgets in other departments, right? Am I correct?
It's real money.
Well, it's money, but it's not something that they sit down and come up with a budget with. They haven't in the past, I don't believe, with the town manager. I don't know if they did this time. They haven't, have they? No.
I know,
So really then.
You're right, they haven't. I thought they had, and I said that one year, and
Yeah,
Karen
no.
Brett pricing and they don't do it.
They
You're right.
don't do it because that's somehow not been part of what they've
Yeah,
been asked to do.
I
Yeah.
assumed it was, but
Yeah,
it's.
no.
So really, they're not held to this number because they're not the ones that have put it in.
That's,
That may be something that the next town manager during the budget season and the board decide to, get a budget from the waterfront committee in their department. Make them come up with a budget.
But someone's responsible for it. All I'm suggesting is that the number should be as accurate or as close to the
Yeah.
possible revenue that they expect.
Like take last year's revenue
Yes.
actual
And
and then
then-
use that as your starting point. This,
Yes.
20,000, it probably looks like we just, same as last year, same as
And
last year
that
without.
seems to be the case every year. It's misleading. It doesn't matter who's responsible for it.
Right, I love the departments, like I said, I'm not naysaying, I just have, would like to have a better number for the,
The new fees for the primary pier, what do they amount to roughly?
Extra of 4,000?
Oh, no, we were about 10.
No, but I mean extra, above and
Oh,
beyond.
yeah.
4 or 5
So
thousand.
we had an actual in 2019 and 21,
Mm-hmm.
so now you're asking for 25, there's your $4,000 in there.
that's pretty close, that one,
That
I just
was
wanted
not
to-
their actual.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, I just went through and compared these fiscal year 2020 numbers to date with the ones that Ellen had sent us, our revenue report, and they were all accurate except for state revenue was off by just 1,000, and charges for services is off by 4,000. The rec is off by, the actual revenue is 263,801.49, and that would be 59.95% of the revenue received at 66.67% of the year. So I feel like we're in a lot better position at this time this year than we were at this time last year when we were very far from the target. So
But the target revenue, as you know, doesn't cover the expenses, and the town has the heartache about how much support the taxpayers should.
well, not all the town,
No, it's a-
right? Like, most of the town just votes to approve it. So I think we should be careful when we sit in these chairs when we speak for the town and say that we have a heartache about this department, because we don't all have a heartache about it.
Okay, all right.
Just saying.
I don't have a panic about the departments, but I am concerned about the revenue projections.
Yes.
Most departments have been off every year. I have two questions. These various breakdowns with the percentage increase, have the revenues been factored into this yet?
Well, the revenue is different, it's run different, it's not intermingled with the expenses at all.
so the answer is.
What?
I mean, the expense reports and revenue reports are totally separate reports,
No, but,
I guess.
maybe I should say.
I think what Ben's saying is we need to see them together so that we know what the bottom line is. So when we, correct me if I'm wrong, or just stop me, but when it says it's a 5.7% increase, this is not after we adjust for revenue. Because when you adjust for revenue, then it is not a 5.7% increase.
We're just looking at the increase in the expenses, the increase in the revenues,
Yes.
and they meet.
So the revenues have not been applied to any of these numbers yet? All right. My second question is the 2020 projected number. It doesn't match up with what we put on the warrant last year. Most of them do.
Well, I think some of them are combined, and if I can go print you off what I think sometimes they combine some of the revenues into different categories, like state revenues and,
The categories match up with the article.
which ones don't match?
Well, the bottom total was 2 million something, and I think those were last year's, and we knocked them down. But either figure does not match that. The third one is state revenue, which is way off on either one of these compared to what it was last year.
I took these from the budget, the actual budget. that was projected, so those, I didn't have anything to do with that warrant, I don't know where those numbers come from.
Well, the warrant is what we go by. Well,
That's what's approved.
That's what's approved.
I guess I'm asking that we at least double check that figure against what we actually put on the warrant. I mean, I am concerned about these revenues, they just get thrown out and we end up paying for it at the end of the year.
I just see what I can do with that.
Thank you, Ken.
Bottom line though, do we, like, at the bottom line, where right now 70.91% we've received of what we projected if you add them all together. So I would want to go back and look, and I will in just a minute, go back and look at where we were at this point last year, but I think that, you know, if one department misses, other
Well,
departments.
no, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
I think the Article 4, which is the revenue article, there's a total at the bottom,
Oh,
and it doesn't correspond with this total
Is that from last year?
projected. This is the one we signed for last year, where it says 2020 projected. That should match up with this, and it doesn't.
Oh.
All of them do except for the
Which
state
ones?
revenue line,
The state revenue, what number?
and I just like to know, it should match up,
It should, yes.
unless this is wrong.
Quick question, and I apologize if this was discussed when we talked about the bathrooms, because I was just looking at the waterfront harbor expenses. So I don't know the timing of this, if they were planned for this budget cycle, but we need to take into account the increase in the sewer charges and the water, because it's around 24K or more right now, and if they're gonna be operational in this fiscal year that we're looking at, then we would need to probably double that or more for the public restrooms, right?
As you know, the wastewater is a enterprise account, so that is off to the side. However, the sewer rates will affect bathrooms and will affect.
Because you've got like water for public restrooms for around 3,100 for expenses, and sewer charges for public restrooms at almost 12K.
There'll be two bathrooms at that point, the one we already have, and the maintenance on the second one.
I'm just saying that if we're going to build bathrooms in this fiscal year and we're going to be operational, then you need to bump up the expenses and make sure they're accounted for so that we don't have another 10, 20K for those bathrooms in this budget cycle. Does that make sense?
Anybody else have anything? Yes.
Well, for that, I think they are in this, it goes under the waterfront, they're paying for the first year of use in their proposal of water and sewer. But my question was under the transfer station, it has, we projected the same revenue as last year. And I know from the past, they've shown us like breakdowns of the things that they sell, and that most of the recyclables are, they're just giving them away, and the only thing we're making money is metal cardboard, I believe. Does that affect this, or how would it stay the same if a lot of our recyclables are?
Well, the recyclables prices are down, sometimes less than zero. So we've stockpiled some, and that's a total, that's projection all capitalized. Don't have any good numbers, so we didn't increase it, we didn't decrease it.
But shouldn't it decrease? I mean, just judging from what we know about the recycling market.
It might, I mean, if I'm instructed to pick a lower number, hey, I have no idea. I mean, oil prices, we locked in, it's a nice number. Oil prices have taken a tumble. Recyclables may or may not pick up. Depends where we send them to get processed, because new markets may develop, but highly likely, because this whole long supply line to the other side of the world, doesn't stand up to stresses. So it's hard to.
Basically, we're just taking a hit on the cardboard right now.
Yeah.
The recyclables went all into single stream at that time, which we were paying to get rid of.
Yeah.
So the only thing we're taking a hit on is cardboard. The price is bottomed out, but I'm stockpiling as much as I can, trying not to give it away if we do see a rebound.
Okay. But you think it'll be neutral?
I'm thinking it will come up, We'll get some out of it. It should stay in neutral, because we're not paying out for single stream,
Yeah.
which, that price went sky high before we ended up switching.
And the other thing is if the prices are low, we're gonna have to pay big tipping fees just to get rid of it. Whatever, you know, ship it quite a ways, stick it in a hole in the ground or burn it, whatever they do. That stuff is not cheap.
The tipping fee, do we have a contract with the company for that?
Yes, we do. Fiberite,
Is that contract up for renewal?
it's not yet.
Not yet.
They just
I'm not sure.
They just started.
Just, 2000, 3-year contract. I'm not sure, 3 or 5.
Because I'm just wondering if by looking around, I don't know, maybe you can save money in that area as far as getting rid of our trash, taking it. I don't know.
Well, yeah, we've gone from burning it, which that company closed up, and it's about all you're gonna get right now unless you put it into a landfill, which costs more money.
One thing that we can do is encourage people not to throw food waste into their garbage because it's very heavy. And if you pull the food waste out, the trash is a lot lighter, and they can compost it, and then I think Lincoln County may actually pay us for the compost. At least they take it away for free.
They take it away.
And so that's something that would not only benefit the environment, it would benefit our pocketbooks.
We initiated that at the county when I was there, and something like 35% by weight of domestic, I don't know what you call it. They don't call them food waste, it's called food scraps. Anything that's combustible that comes out is
Yeah.
food scraps. And it does make a difference.
It's
And
heavy.
It is.
Like you
And
throw
it-
away a twice bitten apple.
And it doesn't burn easily. But I mean, we in Wisconsin have the barrels there for food scraps, and they do get transferred across a couple times a week.
Yeah, a couple times a week, if not more.
So that, yeah, I agree that should be encouraged.
So that is being separated out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Let me
That-
see.
If
Okay.
people separate it.
If people separate, right, because I have the little chart and I don't remember seeing that on there.
As you come into the building, it's the barrels right by the doors.
Um, During a budget meeting, we also had a discussion at one point about a pay-as-you-go, a pay per bag.
You tried that.
Well, that's an answer a lot of the time, but, times are different too.
No, I think it was a few years ago, we put that out to ballot, and it was shot down by the town.
There's another paper, I'm paying $2 a bag because I'm not recycling, throw it in the bin.
Yeah, the recycling now is, we're giving the recycling away right now. The plastic products, the glass products,
Mhm.
we're giving it up to Lincoln County to get rid of it. If we had the manpower, we could save it, pack it, sell it.
But you have a special bin that you put like the milk containers and all
Yeah.
that in.
Milk containers, grade 2 plastic, and then that all goes out into a bigger bin, and it goes off to Lincoln County.
Mhm.
I was referring to
You
the-
take it,
I was referring to the big bin beside the office. You throw the bags in. If you don't recycle, you can throw them in there, but you gotta pay $2 a bag.
I don't.
That's what I always heard, if you didn't
If you didn't
recycle.
recycle 25% of your garbage, they'd charge you, like if you pulled up and you just threw all your garbage in, they'd charge you for the bag. If you gotta
Really?
reach your 25%.
So how do you know they're not recycling?
You've gotta keep your eye on
Um,
manpower.
I didn't know we were charging people for that.
I mean, to me, if it's in a plastic bag, whether it's green, white, yellow, or purple, how do you know what's in that bag?
Because we don't matter what's in the bag, it's what they take over to the recycling. If we see them empty 1 bag, 2 bags of garbage, of recycle, and then that's the way it was set up by Ron like 5 years ago.
If I go up there with a bag and throw it in, I pay $2. If I go up there with a bag and throw it in and have cardboard, I don't pay anything.
But I mean, in all defense here, I may burn my cardboard at home. I might have a barrel back down in my yard somewhere, and I may throw it in there and burn it.
Well, I hope you pull all the tape off.
Yes.
La 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 la.
Theoretically.
just don't listen to me. Just ignore me. I didn't realize we were doing that.
Yeah, that's been going on for, I'd say, 5 years now.
I don't know, Carol goes to the doc once a week and he never tells me it's $22.
I remember that when they introduced this whole new recycling problem.
Yes, Zach.
Yeah, if we're not open to charging for Wiscasset residents or ones that have a contract through us, could we have the dump open for other towns and they would have to pay per bag or per pound?
Well, they support the transfer station at this point in time.
Other towns are not a part of our agreements.
I don't think anybody that's not part of our agreement comes there, do they?
They're not allowed
If we
to.
can catch them, keep them from coming, we get a lot of Dresden in, and it all boils down to manpower.
You know, I've said this before, I think we discussed this before when we were talking about the transfer station. I think that Wiscasset should have a certain color sticker, Alma should have a certain color sticker, Dresden should have a certain color sticker. That way you know what town that vehicle's from. I mean, I suggested that 2 or 3 years ago when we were talking, and it was just went over everybody's head at that point.
I thought they.
I have a sticker,
I thought we.
I have a sticker. Yeah. They give them out
Yeah, I know.
for Wiscasset residents.
She's saying no different colors
Oh,
for
A
different
different
towns.
color for every town. I mean, Alma can go there at this point in time, even
And
though
it's
they
what,
say.
somebody
They
reads
have a
the
different
stickers
color
or
sticker.
just get the cents? You just kind of pay, if you work there, you kind of pay attention to them, or do you mean really track them?
No, I'm not really tracking them. You know that yellow is Alma.
It is color coded,
It is?
yes.
They heard you.
Well, I don't have one on my truck, so I don't go to the train.
So if you look at the state revenue on
I'll have to
that,
look at Carol's truck.
Yeah.
where it says
If I
70,000.
see you driving up, I wouldn't even bother looking
It
for a
looks like,
sticker. See, a lot of people
they
even
didn't
know.
include all the state
I'm no
revenues in
different than
that,
anybody
but
else in this
that's correct.
town.
State revenues projection,
Yes,
So
sir.
and not
would-
70,000.
Would the town be open to taking other people's
So
trash if
somehow
they paid for it?
that-
Not within our.
Definitely,
Do you wanna
I'd
talk
take
about it?
revenue in, but it'd have to even out with what we're paying to get rid of our trash, you know.
Oh, for sure, you'd have to charge it out
Yeah,
to make
state
sure
revenue, this one.
it made up, so maybe if it's by pound, then you could easily, I mean, I don't know what would be
Yeah,
best.
by
You
pound.
only want to take their metal, and what else we get paid
But
for?
somehow.
Yeah.
Best scenario right
Just
now,
not know which
if you
ones.
can get the more recycles you can get out of your garbage,
Yeah.
the better off you are. The less weight that goes into that
So
hopper.
far, this one.
Yep.
If we're running that hopper out of there 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes in the summertime, maybe more.
Running.
That's 100,000 pounds of a while.
Better.
Zach, when you're talking about other towns, what are you talking about?
Like, could be Dresden, or ones that don't have contracts.
Am I
So that they use our transfer station to pay to use it.
Just an extra revenue.
Now we're
Okay, what I
gonna bring
mean.
up our volume, which is gonna bring more trucking, more
Yeah.
people, more money.
On the warrant.
Yeah.
We're right at the edge right now, but we got the manpower and
We'd have to hire more people at that point.
we'd have to hire more people. We'd have to probably get another truck.
But to me, if we're gonna go open it up to another town like Dresden, Edgecombe, or anything, I want them to have the same type of contract that Alma has and Westport has, that they pay a percentage of the entire, basically, cost to run that
Yeah,
transfer
but
station.
we wouldn't make any money on it because now we got 200,000 miles on this truck, we're gonna need another truck, we're running twice as much.
Right.
We're gonna have more manpower, so we'd probably break even with more work.
I think we might be opening ourselves up to Pandora's box at that point, and we'd be subsidizing other towns, and I think that's something that a lot of people are trying to get away from. Wisconsin subsidizing other areas, other towns, taking care of our own, but that's my opinion. You're looking at me like I don't know what I'm not talking about.
Oh, just that whole of that, I'm sorry, nothing.
Okay.
And just I go back to the school thing, and everyone's like, oh yeah, Wisconsin's subsidizing other towns, and it was completely the opposite, and we're still reeling, but that's not, we don't have to talk about that now. We have had ours taken care of by others for a long time. We have.
Does anybody else have anything to say, any questions?
On anything?
Anything you want, we are in the discussion phase.
Okay, actually, he came back with good news.
She did?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course you did.
Well, on the state revenues, we only asked for 70,000 and it should have been 600 something thousand.
Yeah, it looks like when they calculated the state revenue reimbursement on the warrant, they didn't include all the categories there, so.
But under that line, we've taken over 400,000 more than we,
That's awesome.
which is good news.
That's good news.
It's not a minus, so it's.
So, yeah, it was a mistake, but it turned out to our favor.
But I don't know what number they actually used for the tax commitment, because the budget amount was correct on this, so.
If they used something that was different from the warrant, they ought to get their hands slapped. Well, but that's how it's worked, that's how it's supposed to work.
We can
Right.
check the commitment.
You just have to watch that this year when it comes to your vehicle.
But to follow it through to understand this process, let's go back to the waterfront. We budgeted 20,000, if they only take in 5, that minus 15,000 is automatically taken out of the general fund to cover the difference.
That's right.
Which is why normally our general fund has been really, really low, because we've had to cover these surpluses.
That's right. And that's why we get the expense reports and we watch the departments very closely on their spending, because we don't want overruns in the budget either, because then we have to go into the general fund and make up the difference.
Which is why I think some of these need to be looked at again. I mean, the waterfront revenue projection is, that's just pie in the sky. And the airport doesn't look much better. I mean, I think we really need to be accurate with these things.
But the other thing I say with the airport, and I think it's been mentioned before, that because of this timing of year, you're gonna start getting more planes in, you're gonna start spending more fuel, you're selling more fuel, so you might get more revenue. Yes, Kim?
I agree with that many departments in town, there's a seasonal element to their revenues, but unless you actually have several years where you can look and see and make a comparison to what actual revenues were, it's a little difficult to say, well, in the next 3 months, they're gonna make up the difference. I mean, we do have history that we can look at.
That's why sometimes in the revenue, it's nice to have, like on this sheet, have like 2019 projected, and then the 2019 actual, so that you would be able to compare year to year.
Right.
You don't do it now, but I'm just saying, it would have been nice, and then you could look at 2020 at the same time and see where they are.
I mean, we have the 2019 reports right in our inbox. We could just, I'm not connected to a printer, but we could get that easily. Those reports exist.
And even the 2020, we see what the projected is. It might be helpful to know, where were they in 2019 at this day? You see what I'm saying? Because, pardon me?
I can tell you, but I
Oh,
can forward you
okay.
a spreadsheet right now.
Okay.
Because I was just looking, like last year on this day, the rec, which is when I was looking at, was 53.59%.
Okay.
And this year on this day, it's 59.95%. For some reason, the Parks and Recs line again is not correct on this report.
That's because that was run before the month closed. You see
But the
it.
rest of the ones are correct.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So about 3% better this year. Was you
From
just like
last
3?
year?
Yeah, or 6.
6%.
Excuse me, 6.
Yeah, 6.5.
Okay.
So we're doing better.
Yes. So the question then is
But everybody
the
else-
new projected revenue more or less, you know, how much, what's the percent increase over last year's?
2019 projection?
Yeah.
Hang on.
Oh, she's getting one.
I did, I had a question. I was looking on the second page, the consolidated thing, about the library, and I really thought, if I understand, the library was mostly covered by like donations or endowments or something like that. I'm trying to understand what goes into the 57K of expenses that, because there's no breakdown for the
That's
library.
basically been the same. They make that request the same amount.
But what do they spend it on? Is it, aren't they mostly covered by?
They only receive a certain portion from their endowment, and then they get subsidized through the town, and they also do fundraisers, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right, Judy?
Yes,
Yeah.
we do.
Yes, but there's, because we investigated that a few years ago. We had the gentleman from the library come in and explain it to us, that their endowment is almost like our Payson fund. They can only take a percentage, and they do, and so then they get subsidized by the town.
And the endowment for the library, the major portion of that money is only allotted to the art collection that is upstairs in the library for the public to see. And the fundraiser, there is a big fundraiser that the Friends of the Wiscasset Library have every year. And we maintain the children's library and do a lot of the capital improvements, carpeting, carpentry work. The children's book room has all new custom-made bookshelves from the county jail inmates and the industry perfect. So, as you can tell, I'm a library proponent.
And other towns contribute to that as well.
Yes, they do.
Yes.
But the major portion comes from Wisconsin. Yes, sir.
John, you may have mentioned this earlier in the discussion, but I noticed that wastewater isn't included in the.
No, it's not. It's an enterprise account. It doesn't hit the general fund, doesn't require the taxpayer support. And I figured there was enough on our plate without getting into that. And that is, it's very complex. We're trying to navigate between what the ratepayers can afford to pay versus what's required by the DEP. And you may have been aware, we've been authorized to do a study on sustainability and the impact of potential sea level rise.
Right.
That's a whole different beast. But we are struggling with it. So far behind, there's not money.
Is Rick said it a couple of meetings ago, he was going to come in with some special articles for the wastewater treatment plant?
He's got, he did produce some new numbers, but I didn't include in the package today because it's focused on getting the budget part and the standalone, hopefully, the standalone enterprise.
Well, okay, I didn't know whether he wanted to ask for that, so I said no.
No, we'll have a special session primarily with wastewater, but we've been working with revenues and assumptions and accounting methodology. It's kind of a lot of stuff, in fairness. As you know, we put together a 30% increase for sewer rates, which was allotted once it was catch-up. And this year, in the proposed budget, we have not put an increase in, but Rick did warn that we really should have an increase. I'm hoping that with this development and the impact fees that are beginning to come in, I'm hoping that will take the edge off. But there will be almost certainly an increase next year in the sewer rates.
Yes, Judy.
Was there a question about the meters, the sewer meters that need some attention?
Yeah, well, you can answer that better than I, but the meters are owned by the water system, and there are some that are not either operating efficiently, because apparently after a number of years, like 10 or 15, the readings aren't that accurate. There is a cost to either replace them or repair them. Do you want to talk more about that?
Sure. We got a list from the water district the other day. I think there's about 50 meters. So we're working with Chris to find out which ones would have the biggest impact right now. Because we're really short money. I don't know how much you want me to talk about where we are.
Well, if we want to divert it to wastewater, that's okay.
So if you want a quick scenario, so a lot of you have talked about revenues the last couple of years and where you were budget-wise. So I went back to 2017, 2018, and 2019. And for like the last 3 years or so, your budget's been about $100,000 more than what your revenue's been. So even with the increase that we got last year and we instituted, I think it was in August, we have generated only $58,000 of new revenue. So right now, the other thing to know is the sewer revenue can vary from month to month drastically. So let's see. I think so far for the 2019-2020 revenue, 1 month, the low month was 39,000 and the top month was 63,000. So it's quite a spread from month to month. So what I've done is I took 2018 and 2019 months and looked at what the revenue, the additional revenue was. And so then I looked at, for the next 4 months, I took what we had last year and then basically figured that maybe the increase was $5,000 a month. So I put that in, and so the anticipated shortfall is about $214,000. So what I'm suggesting is that last year, this is just my thoughts anyway, that you haven't set anything aside for depreciation and you had budgeted $100,000. So that would make up some of the shortfall. And then we stopped spending except for emergency needs pretty much about a month and a half ago. And so, let's see. So we anticipated budget savings from this budget. We figured that there was a total of about 54,000, almost 55,000, and we have 2 other accounts to look at. I'm thinking that's somewhere between $7,000 to $10,000. So that's about 60,000. And we got septage dumping fees that wasn't in the other revenue stream. And then we have an account balance and the impact fee of 7. So we're about $30,000 to $40,000 short. But what makes it extremely difficult is the following year, because that budget amount is really what you need to run the plan. It's not going to be going down indefinitely in the short term. So I really don't know where to go from here. It's not a rosy picture, but there are so many needs, and we haven't even addressed all of them because we haven't had the time nor the manpower to go out and look at other stuff that needs to be done. So that's it in the short term.
So what you're saying is the meters are an issue, but it goes along with everything else that is a maintenance issue.
Right, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to cherry pick and replace the meters that have the highest revenue to us, because right now all they're charging is the minimum. And my guess is there's some of those that they're using more than the minimum. And then I'm trying to figure out where I can come up with the money to do that. I kind of like to do like 24 of them this year and 24 as soon as the budget comes in 1st of July. So we're working with Chris on cost of meters and how much it'll cost to get them installed and go from there.
Who owns the meters?
We evidently, my understanding is we buy the meters, and they used to install them, but they used to have the water district install them because they take the signal electronically to do the billing.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess he said that the town hasn't done that for years. And and that's why we get a bunch of meters up there that don't work. So my guess is there's some potential for additional revenue.
Well, what I'm getting at is you've got a meter and it's giving you your water and your sewer at the same time.
No, these are just the sewer only.
This is
Some
sewer.
people have wells and then they just,
Okay.
so it comes off of the well, I guess.
But what if you only have water and not sewer? I mean, like, in my house, I have,
Then you only get a water bill, you don't
right,
get a sewer bill.
exactly, but, so who's paying for that meter?
That's the water's meter. That's the water's meter.
But the sewer treatment plant is buying the meters?
No, only for the ones that have sewer only.
Okay, all right, that's what I was getting at. If they're just getting sewer, then we will buy them. But if it's sewer and water, then I think it's a little bit, an issue at that point. Okay. Does anybody have any
These
questions?
meters are all hooked up in the same, aren't they?
Yes, they're the same meters, the exact same meters they use for water are the same ones that we would get and have them install on the well system. It's the same exact ones. They can read them remotely as they drive past.
I mean, whether it's on town water or on a well, it's the same thing.
Correct.
And they
So
don't have
they-
two, if they're on both, they only have one.
Correct, correct. Yep,
Because all you're doing is measuring the water that's going through the system.
correct.
And then billing off of that.
Yeah, right. And the water company has identified meters that they believe are defective.
Yes.
I don't see why there would be any problem having those fixed.
Considering that I'm probably $40,000 into shortfall already this year, I'm trying to figure out where to get the,
But shouldn't the water company be replacing them?
no, because it's just for the sewer bill.
Oh, these are just sewer that we're talking about?
That's right.
They're not
Yeah,
water
yeah.
and sewer.
I mean, I know what you're saying. I'd like to fix them, and I could probably do 25 of them for $4,000 and be over and done with it. And probably some of the revenue will take care of that.
Well, okay, if they have a meter that they know is defective, that goes to the water company, do they have them fixed?
I would assume the water company fixes their own.
Well, I kind of see it as being we're all in this together.
Oh, well, remember, you signed a contract with the water district for them to do your billing.
We're still all the town of Wiscasset.
They're not part of the town of Wiscasset.
I know the setup, but the
Yeah.
town of Wiscasset did put the bill to build the water company we have today. It's not like there's not some connection. I mean, I'm just saying if there are faulty meters, I think they ought to be fixed. And we can change the policy. I think the original policy was, because it was also new to everybody, the town did pay for all the meters to go in for the sewer lines and stuff. But if they've since gone defective, that may be up to the
So
board.
are you asking that the water district fix the sewer, the ones that are just recording the sewer bill? Or are you asking us to do it? That's my question. I just want to make sure I understand.
I'm not really saying which way it ought to go, but I don't see why we couldn't come up with a decision. And if it's costing us money, then we ought to do something.
I agree with you.
How much are they, like, for a meter?
What was it?
$145 per meter.
And they're willing to install them. We're kind of negotiating a price right now. It'll probably come about $200 a pop.
And how many meters?
About 50 of them. I didn't do a final count, but I think they indicated to you that it's about 50 of them.
They did.
And you don't have the money in your budget to do that?
Considering I project a $40,000 shortfall, I mean, I don't have a problem if you say go ahead and we'll worry about the shortfall later. I'm more than happy to do that.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we should be able to work out a plan and go forward with it, whatever it might be.
I'm just saying, I'm not sure where I could get the money before the next budget kicks in, and even then it's, so.
Because at this point in time, you're gonna be minus $40,000.
That's
in your
what I
budget.
projected, yep.
That's what you're projecting, your revenue between your resident and expenses, you're gonna be minus 40,000. So we don't have the money to fix them.
Well, I'm not, like I said, I'm not really saying what it should be, but it's possible we don't have to pay for that. The homeowner might have to pay for it.
Well, the homeowner is getting a deal now, so I don't want the meter fixed.
Well, if we know their meter's defective, I mean, we
I don't know.
ought to do something.
I'll play
It's
devil's
not their
advocate
meter, it's
again.
the town's meter.
If you call Central Maine Power and your meter is all messed up, it's their responsibility to fix it. They're not gonna ask you to pay for it. I'm just saying, I mean, it's bought by the town, it's our responsibility.
All right, but like he said, maybe some of the high volume ones.
Yeah, I wanted to sit down with Chris and say, which ones do you think are way above the minimum? And then look at the billing cycle to say, well, look, we aren't gonna bill them for next 3 months or whatever, you know, and base it on that billing cycle, so. That's why I don't think we really have to do all of them by the budget end of June 30th, that we could stagger some in the next budget.
That would make more sense.
You mentioned 24 were the biggest culprits. If the town were to scratch around and find the money, however, to buy the meters and the installation fee, they could bill us next year. That might.
Maybe, I'll talk to them.
Does the water company ever check these meters to see whether or not people are bypassing them at all?
They can tell. They have a chip in there that gives them various signals, and they can tell when someone is living there and suddenly there's no usage, or it sends them an alarm.
Okay.
And they can also shut it off from the road.
Okay, I mean, I'm not very
Yeah.
mechanical, but I could take my meter off and bypass it.
You could,
if I
and
wanted
if
to.
you were to discuss it, they would know if it's one of them.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So they'll catch.
I'll put your name on the list.
No, but because I have one, I know,
Yeah.
you know.
I know.
No, if they come up with, look at
See,
mine,
wait,
there's an inch of dust on it.
Way back, there weren't electronic reading ones, and now there are. So,
Yeah,
So it's my understanding then you're gonna check with Chris and see what we have as far as the big ones, and then take it
Yes.
from there.
yep,
Okay. All right,
okay.
all right.
thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
So,
Oh, I'm sorry, Kim had her hand up again.
I just didn't want to change the subject, but I'm going to. Is the emergency medical services projected revenue, is that accounting for what is typically not collectible?
That's cash in hand. I project what we're actually going to put into our town treasury after write-offs, yes.
Any other questions regarding anything?
Regarding anything?
No.
No?
Your hand up.
I know it will. And this sort of goes back to that whole list of topics, and I have wondered if anyone has ever taken a look, apologies to the fine gentleman sitting behind us, but if anyone has ever taken a close look at what it costs the town in things like insurance and dental and all of those things that go along, retirement, that go along with an employee, and looked also at those departments or those specific services that could be contracted out. Because while someone out there is paying for all of those things, sometimes contracting out a particular job, if not an entire department, it could be a lot less.
That sounds very nice, but.
Let me, Judy.
Go ahead.
We've asked the voters before.
Every year.
Union contracts.
It has been looked at though numerous
It
times.
has
Every
been looked
year.
at, but we have union contracts. And to try and change a union contract is like trying to stop a dam from exploding.
You need an act from.
Trust us, we have been there. You have certain things that they will not give up no matter.
Oh, I'm not
And part of
asking.
the contract states, we cannot contract work out. If I'm not mistaken. We cannot contract work out.
No, not unless we dissolve.
We have to dissolve the union.
No, the whole department,
No, just the department.
That's
just the
right.
department.
And it's not gonna happen. Dennis, I've heard that something I'm wrong.
So, and I understand where you're going with that. From somebody who's come from private EMS that contracted a lot with municipalities, I'm pretty good at this. When you looked at CLC, what is it, a year and a half or whatever ago, it was $175,000 a year. They went up 93% this year on their town assessments.
They went up the year before too.
And you, at least here, you're controlling my budget. When you contract it out, you've lost it. And if you have to do away with the EMS, or you do away with your public works, and it doesn't work, you're gonna spend a whole lot of money to bring it back. So, in Camden Rockport area, I was well involved in that. Their contract in 6 years has gone up 1,600% for their private EMS. So, I mean, I'm not saying that some areas can't be contracted out, but once you lose that control, it's gonna be really hard to get it back.
You know, and you're talking about medical insurance and dental, stuff like that. Even us as a town during negotiations, we're always trying to find out the best policy.
Sure.
But again, it's getting the union to agree, because whatever the union agrees to, the non-union get. And, right now, we're 80-20. And can we get them to come lower? It ain't gonna happen, but we try. And we look at different policies to help us to bring the cost down. But again, the union has the final say. See what they want to do, and we try and offer something to compensate. If we take something away, we have to compensate for that. Yes.
But just to tie into some of Kim's questions here, but do we also review the benefit program and the insurance program? Do we price that out
Yes, we do.
frequently?
Yes, we do. We have changed it, 2 or 3 times?
Which one?
The medical and dental, we've changed it quite a few times to get better service for them and cheaper prices for us.
Right.
We try and do that.
Just a comment on, contracting out versus running our own. I mean, currently with our public safety, we've got the fire department, we've got EMS, we've got the police department. I know they work very closely together. I know that fire department would be called by EMS for lift, what do they call that, lift assist. And, they all come home here, or they come through here on a pretty regular basis. And when I was at the county, there was some talk about the sheriff's office providing police for the different towns, Wiscasset being one of them. And I was over there, I didn't think it'd be a good idea for Wiscasset, because you know darn well, there are priorities, and unless you're the top priority for a given service or contractor, you're going to, many times, you will just plain wait. Whereas with us, we jump on it as fast as we can, and say with an ambulance or a police response, and I'm not beating the drum for these guys, but with an ambulance or police call, 15 minutes is a long time. And even with the best will in the world, there's times you can get to the location in less than 10 minutes. And so you add another 15 minutes to that. A lot of things happen. Whether it be domestic violence, or a medical thing, or a fire. So, and then of course Ted, who's not in any of those departments, his guys, he'll be out there plowing a road to make it passable when it's icy, sanding, and so on and so forth. Any hour of the day and night. And so, again, none of this stuff is cheap, but My limited experience with contractors taking over town departments, I would say is not particularly positive. And not always, as has been explained, not always the most cost-effective way of going things, because you got no say in the running of the show. Okay.
Plus, we're on the roads with radios, and when these guys get called out, we get in front of them. During any ice storm, snowstorm.
So that'd be my, some of the stuff we contract out, like, our computer services, we don't have that in-house, nor should we. There are some other things we contract out, but the basic services that people expect from the town, we tend to have them here, and the voters. For example, looking at police, if you're talking, not to badmouth the sheriff's department, but if you want someone to check whether your business is, locked, the guy goes by at 2 o'clock in the morning, well, that looks like that door might be ajar. Your local police department will say, I better check. And whereas the other fellow's flying from here to there, plus, this gas may not be top priority. It's kind of, well, if I had time, I could check that, but I don't have time. So,
And I think
my 2 cents worth.
We've taken advantage more than once, whether it be the fire, ambulance, police, EMS, whatever. And the taxpayers want their own services. Contracting, I asked the chief to come in here, was it over the weekend, Friday? Saturday, and check and make sure the doors were locked. I couldn't ask the county to do that, those are things that people look at, and if I call the police or if I call EMS, I want the person who's gonna take care of me is gonna be somebody I know. They're gonna take good care of me, and I think that's worth more than anything. And that's how a lot of the elderly in this town feel.
And people with families as well.
Yeah.
And Friday night we had a middle school dance, a fundraiser for the 8th grade trip to Boston. And I emailed the chief and I was like, we're gonna have middle school dance. I don't know if you guys aren't busy, if anybody wants to stop by. And then sure enough, they did. They came to dance, Sergeant Hatch came, and the kids loved that. So that was just nice, and I don't know if the same thing would have happened, and they all know who he is, and that was special.
Yeah, it's a relationship between the town departments and the townspeople, so that's super important.
That's a good example of community policing at work.
Yeah, all of
I
us.
think, if I could just say one thing, I think you guys haven't got my report for last month, but a prime example was 2 weekends ago, not this past weekend, the weekend before, there was, and I always say that nobody really knows in town what the PD does, but we had 4 overdoses last weekend. 2 of them just over the line in Dresden.
At the same time.
At the same time. 2 of them in Dresden, so EMS was tied up there. My unit went down to Dresden to back up EMS at that scene. While he was there, one of the people there said, well, I can't get hold of my fiancée. She was here doing drugs with us. She's not answering her phone. So my officer grabbed him. They came here and found 2 more overdosed here. No ambulance because they were tied up in there down in Dresden. My guy did CPR on that guy for 21 minutes until Boothbay got there with Narcan. So if it wasn't for that, I can't say enough. You
That's
need
why,
the department.
yeah, that's why we need you guys, definitely.
Peace of mind is worth its weight in gold.
That's correct. And we appreciate everything you all do, we really do.
It's also one of the things that attracts people to our town. I'm from away, I came here 15 years ago.
Newbie. Huh?
Yeah, I know, it's still very new.
So you're from away?
I am from away, from way away. Anyway, 15 years ago, but one of the things that I loved was this very charming, small town community and all of this sort of holistic stuff that happens here. And I came from a place where everybody was just looking to make it as cheap as possible and contract out, and I moved away. I chose this place for the quality of life to raise my family, because that's a selling point. I know lots of young families that are coming here because this is open to quality of life, That's like what we really have here.
It is important to economic development, because businesses do call here and ask if we have police department. Rhinell asks me all the time, you guys are on 24 hours, right? Because they have people there all hours of the day. And it's important for businesses to know that that's there.
And that's why, we'll go back again, that's why we need a planner. To get that person in here and to really push the town. Because we do have a lot of assets
You definitely do.
that are favorable to people coming into town. I mean, I'm from away too. I came here in 1968. And I'm still what they call a flatlander. You know, and I came to I've seen this town grow from 1968 till now, and so is Catherine. She came shortly after I did.
1980, so
But-
I'm a flatlander too.
You know, I came from Cleveland, Ohio to a little town called Wiscasset, Maine. And it was like, wow. It was just to me charming to come up.
We're in a minority here.
I was born in Bath, though.
Oh, there was God.
I don't think it was got that long ago back then.
They hardly had a doctor.
That's right.
I had my daughter here, and I was in the, this is a really short story, but in Miles, and there's a really nice nurse or a helper or whatever, and she's like, oh, we love when you nice people come up here and have, you know, and start your family. And I was like, well, you know, I know I'm not a Mainer, but my daughter's a Mainer, and she said, just because a cat has kittens in the oven, don't bring them biscuits. I was like, oh, all right, maybe like it takes two generations.
Well, this is a good thing. We're having a nice conversation here. We're able to laugh. That's great. Do you have anything else for us?
Not on the data side. I just need direction as to when more meetings, what do you want to see, what do you want to look at?
Could I?
Can I say something about the next meeting? I had a very important meeting last Thursday. This coming Thursday is my only Thursday off. And I postponed that to this Thursday. It's important. Could we have the next meeting on Monday?
I can't do Monday.
I was just gonna ask the same thing, no more this week is all I was gonna.
I can't do Monday.
Is there a drop
But you
dead
can have it
date?
without me. I mean, you can have it without me. But I can't do Thursday either. I have I have to be at the hospital.
So we don't have a meeting this Thursday?
I don't have a meeting.
What is the drop dead date? Because we haven't looked at capital improvements yet either.
Drop dead is, well, we had calculated.
End of March.
March something. I forget, didn't you tell us that? Not you, who told us?
It's in an email, end of March.
Well, according to Maine Municipal opinion, that the select need to present their warrant to the town clerk 60 days prior to election, which would be April 9th, same day as the deadline for turning in your nomination papers. The town clerk would like them by April 1st because it gives her a little extra time to get the ballots printed, but this, you're only required to give it to her 60 days prior to election.
So not a lot of time left. And is the board going to be asking the town manager to go back on any of this? I mean, will there be any further?
I'm sure we will be having those discussions.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
that's
in
not a
years
lot of
past, we have
time.
come up to a conclusion to say to the town manager, we want you to cut the budget, the entire budget 2%. We've done that in the past too. We as a board have not met regarding any of the departments. Judy?
So isn't that really the next step? To have the board make their decision, and then, I mean, we could have the capital improvement presented to us, you know, after you guys make the decision too. I mean, I would think that might move it along.
We have to make decisions, and I think that's our next move. I agree with Judy that we need to look at our departments, where we go from here. Where we're gonna cut, what we're not gonna cut.
I agree, but we don't have all the numbers here in order to make that decision. But if I, Kathy, no, you look that up so you know what we were talking about, that state revenue. Could you double check and see whether or not that bigger figure was put on the commitment?
Well, I think if you look at it, I know on the commitment, you're familiar with how that's done. You list your revenue sharing, your homestead exemption separately out, And I think you'll probably see that that's how it was done, but I can look at it.
And I would like these looked at again and tightened up. I mean,
Which one are you looking at?
the revenue projection line,
So on the airport, if so I could add that at the end of the year, the airport gets the profit it's made from its fuel turned into the revenue on the airport. So you won't see that, like last year, I think it was $28,000 you had last year's, but it's a pretty good chunk of change that would be added to his revenue, but it won't be added till at June 30th. You know, they'll take an inventory of the fuel.
I don't have a problem with it.
And so that, you know, in the airport, I mean, the waterfront, and their busy time is coming up. We just sent out the pier vendor applications, and the mooring permits will go out, so those numbers will be jumping up in the next couple of months quite a bit. But
okay. It all sounds good, but I know what you're saying is correct, except I don't believe the projections will hold up. They don't, year after year after year, they don't. But getting back to my original, is that whatever these figures are, they need to be applied to the rest of the budget so we know what the percentage increase is. That makes a big difference on what I would or would not recommend.
So we need that information before we go forward now.
Doesn't that make sense that we
Yes, it
have
does,
that?
it does, because I think we need to have all of our ducks in a row before we go forward and give direction to John as to where we want the departments to go. When we're talking about further meetings, I mean, we really don't need the budget committee, I mean, not to offend anybody, but, because now the decisions are gonna be up to the board, what we want to do. Am I
And then we
correct?
give it to them.
And then
Yep.
But it's a public meeting. and
you
we
can
can't-
attend.
Oh my gosh.
But it won't be classified
Yes.
as a budget workshop with the budget committee, is what I'm saying. Yes.
I had a previous question. I had missed the meeting. I wasn't sure if the Scout Hall was considered a need or if there was some follow-up on it.
Considered a what?
A need.
I think, I don't want to shut down the Scout Hall. I mean, I don't, the board has not discussed, that's what I'm
Okay,
saying,
that's what
we
I
have
was-
not discussed any of this.
Yeah.
We've taken all the information in, but as a board, we haven't discussed anything. Where we want to cut, where we want to keep the Scout Hall on, or ask them to go up to the school, or anything like that. We haven't discussed that.
Well, if I heard you right, I agree with you. I leave this out all the way it is. I don't want to close it.
Or can we use it for other things as well? It just seems if we're using
Well,
it 40 hours a
that's
week.
certainly a possibility.
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, maybe it could be like an event space and people could rent it, get money. I had another question.
Yes.
Do you think that we could ask for a report that would show the June end of year totals for revenue, actual and projected, going back 3 or 5 years?
I would go 3.
Can we ask for
We
that?
can
It would
ask
just
for
be
3.
interesting
Can we
to
ask
see
for
a
3,
trend.
3 years?
So it'd
3
be like,
years.
it would be running the report for June 30th,
Yeah.
for
Individually
2019,
bills.
2018. I think it would be very simple to even get.
So you want.
We could even take them as
The projected and the actual.
Yeah, so that we could see like what did they budget and then what did they actually make for a period of 2019, 2018, 2017. If it's just pressing a button, like gas
2017. You just have to go into previous years. I mean,
Yeah,
You
I
can't get
think-
one, you can't.
I'll leave it
report
up to
with one
Kathy,
thing.
what she,
If it's
what you
easy
can
to
do.
do, I don't want you to
If you
rebuild
decide,
something.
fine.
So 2017, 18, and 19?
Yeah, and if it's easy to do 15 and 16.
Don't stress yourself
Well, I'm
out.
not gonna-
We don't have a
Don't
treasurer.
build
We
it
don't have
as a
treasurer.
spreadsheet, you can give us the ugly report that Ellen gives us. Like, I can read that report, it's fine.
We don't have a treasurer.
Right, but then I was an accountant, so I think you
Yeah,
could
I think
probably
it would
do
be
this
good
pretty
if you
easily.
had them on a spreadsheet only so that.
Well, if
it's
you
easy
want to
complain.
make a spreadsheet, so, but I will complain.
Okay.
If it's like an accounting report, we can all look at that and then
Next
we'll be
Thursday.
fine.
So, shall we do next Thursday? I cannot do this Thursday, and I can't do Monday.
No, I can't do Monday, so.
It's
So,
supposed to be the
next-
19th.
The 19th, that'll give us 2 meetings that week. No, the 17th and the 19th, we'll have, as boards. We'll have our selectmen's meeting on the 17th, and then the 19th.
Sounds awesome.
Right?
I said, that sounds awesome.
So we're gonna have a few days without meetings.
Next Tuesday.
That's our normal selectmen's meeting.
Are we gonna talk about the budget then, or no?
Not at the 17th, no,
Okay.
we will talk about it on the 19th.
And then we have a week and a half before April 1st to like.
And if we
get
have to
together.
meet in between time, then we can do that. We
Yeah.
can have to bite a bullet, we might have to come in and do some meetings. But I think we as a board need to get ourselves together so we can give the information to the budget committee, make our decisions on what we want to do. Plus, if we do decide, after getting all the numbers, that we want to ask for a 2% decrease on all budgets, that'll give the town manager an opportunity to get things rolling.
As you know, last year when we got to the very end, Bernice stood up, I have it right here. She said if we pass everything that's on here, mill rate will go up 1.94%.
That's right.
And that's exactly what happened. And we should be able to get to that point.
Oh, do we have to get Bernice to come in one day?
Yeah.
Is the 19th going to be a joint meeting or just a select meeting?
I think it should be just a selectmen's meeting, don't you?
So all the extra.
You know what I mean?
Meetings on 19.
Yeah.
All are welcome, but
All are welcome if you want to
Please.
come, but I think the 19th, am I getting this correct? Is that what we want to do, is start making hard decisions on where we go?
Correct.
Yeah.
To give them a chance to give us the correct numbers, where they're forecasting percentage-wise, and then we can start looking at where we want to cut. And that's the 19th.
At 5?
Yes, we'll do it at 5. And that still gives us a week and a half, if we have to have an extra meeting in between time. Yes,
We'd have to make sure it's budget time for us to meet once. you finish
yes,
it, so.
yes, we will make sure of that. Definitely. When is your next budget meeting?
We haven't been having, we're usually the second Wednesday of the month, so we're already past.
You already passed it.
Yeah.
So you're
No,
possible,
It'll be tomorrow, we're not gonna have a meeting tomorrow.
so it's possible you could have a meeting the week of the 23rd to the 27th, possibly?
Yeah. I would see
Okay,
why.
as long as we have all the
Yeah.
information to you before the 1st.
Yes,
Okay.
for sure.
And Madam Chair, I hope like last year, we did our final run-through vote and approved it all in our regular selectmen's meeting.
That's, we will do it again this year.
Thank you.
So
Maybe one day.
that means we would have to do that April 1st. She's gonna reply on her
April 1st.
Actually,
No.
no, you won't wait till the 7th, so that won't work. I guess it still would, the 7th, April 7th.
Or we could maybe have a special meeting on the
We
31st.
don't have a meeting on the 1st. That's a Wednesday.
we could do the 31st of March, we could have a special meeting.
I would like to honor Linda's April 1st thing, like if that's what she
No, I'm
wants.
trying to, that's why
Yeah.
I'm looking at the calendar. So our drop dead date to approve the budget is gonna be March 31st.
At a select board meeting.
At a selectmen's meeting.
After.
If that's what we do, but I don't buy that drop
We have to
dead.
budget, we have to have a meeting.
So that's 3 weeks from today.
Before.
And we have one meeting planned so far.
But it's.
It's a separate, Madam Chair, it's a separate issue. And it didn't start until last year, but we've never had slippage before as far as the budget went. We
But if
turned
we're
every,
gonna have an open meeting, if you wanna have an open meeting to approve each one of these departments,
We'll
then
do
we
it on
have
the
to have it
31st.
on the 31st.
okay, but I'm just saying that's because we're accepting, we're being told that the schedule has to be split, and it never has before.
Well, she wanted the time to get all of the data from the approved warrant, however it's done, to get it on those sheets that we push through.
Well, I understand
That
that,
that takes time,
but when,
with everything else she does.
well, okay, nomination papers can't be turned in until the 9th. It's all one document in the end. And once the 9th happens, the state law allows like 3 weeks to print ballots, so on and so forth.
Let us shoot for March 31st at 6 o'clock to have a selectmen's meeting to approve the budget
That's what we're shooting for.
for what we should. If something happens that we have to delay it, we can. But let's at least put that down on the calendar. Yes, Zach?
Would it be possible, if it's approved on the 31st, could we meet on the 1st? Would it be ready in time for us to be able to vote on it
We
the
can
next
meet
day?
anytime, they just need to have the ballot, I mean, the
No.
wording.
No, we have to vote on that.
budget.
We have to vote after that.
I understand that, but
We're
I'm
gonna
saying-
have to take department by department.
Yeah,
Do you approve the X amount of dollars for the airport committee? Vote yes or no. That's what we're gonna have to do
on the 31st.
But by that time, that, like, we've done all of our work and changed
Yes.
it, that'll be pretty quick.
But the warrant still has to be put together, and you still have to meet to sign the warrant, so that's after you approve everything. So the warrant still has to be prepared and signed by the board prior to April 9th.
Well, we can do that.
So we can do that on the 7th.
Yeah, we could do that on April 7th.
And
I mean,
also,
all it is signing it, it's
if
not,
I
we're not gonna be.
remember correctly, in the
That's
2
what-
years past, the warrant's been sitting out there on the selectmen's desk, and all we do is come in and sign it. I think.
I think you guys have met to approve a warrant.
This is the one we did last year at the selectmen's meeting, and we marked up a bunch of things. You know, it goes beyond the budget. We actually changed the interest rate that we pay on overdue tax bills. There are, some housekeeping things that do come up.
Yeah, I think it's.
Yeah, I think we need to shoot for the 31st. We'll meet next Wednesday on the 19th.
No, Thursday on
We're not, that's the problem. On 19th on Thursday,
And Tuesday's our regular
at
meeting.
5 o'clock.
And Tuesday is also St. Patrick's Day, which is a big day for John.
Yes. Everywhere one green.
I'll wear orange.
Yes, Judy.
And it might be possible, if that is a fairly short meeting at 6 o'clock, that 31st meeting, that we can meet right afterwards.
Well,
Do you
Wednesday's
think
your
that's gonna
scheduled
be a
meeting.
fairly short meeting?
I don't think so. I'm just thinking that if we come in here on the 31st to deal with the budget and say yes or no on the articles, it shouldn't last more than a half hour, in my viewpoint, unless we want to make some drastic changes.
To just vote on them, because you're already gonna have done your discussion.
That's right, so
ahead
it
of
should be
time.
plain and
Yeah,
simple.
that's true.
It shouldn't take it should be less than an hour.
I believe that you have to read the article in full
Yeah.
and give a motion and a second and vote.
Who's the chairman?
Give me a second.
She'll put a Jeff, we'll do it all.
Yes, no, yes, I
Just,
understand.
just by the way that you asked the police chief to check the door, he knew he was coming to check the door.
I'm sorry. I'm a short timer,
Until the deadline passes, things are gonna continue to change. They always do.
They do, they always do.
Always do.
But, so our next meeting will be March 19th with the board.
Good.
Okay, 5 o'clock. Okay, any other questions from the board?
We're planning to meet the 1st.
Can I have a motion to adjourn from the board?
So moved.
All those in favor? We're out of here.
Madam Chairman, voted on budget question, all these reservations.
Go to John.